Morning.
Good morning.
I'm eating my oatmeal, so no video for right now.
You're just now eating breakfast?
I don't eat breakfast, so my lunch is kind of actually my breakfast. I have coffee for breakfast.
Just coffee, huh? Okay, we're just going to keep letting everybody in here for a minute. Hey, Peggy. Hey, Chris, I see you're on the call here. I didn't get your RSVP, so you probably don't have the workbook today. So I'll get it to you afterward, okay?
Okay, thanks. I got it on the email that you replied to Andrea.
Mhm.
You guys did a reply all, so it was there from this morning.
Yeah, I sent out the workbook and the link
Right.
last night.
Yeah, maybe that's where I found it.
But Chris, Chris Grobe, I didn't have you down for an RSVP, so I didn't get you the workbook. So it's important that you guys RSVP so that Stacy knows, so I can get you the link and the workbook prior.
I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to make it, to be honest with you. So
That's okay. Well, I'm glad you're here.
it's an interesting topic.
Yes, it is. And something that we use not only in our real estate business, but in every relationship that we have in our lives, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Close the door.
We're here all the time. Okay, well, I know we had a few more other people RSVP. Let me make sure we've got everybody here so far. And I always want to respect everyone's time. So we will go ahead and get started. And then if more pop on, we'll just let them in. Okay, so as Peggy said, this is an interesting topic. So the emotionally intelligent agent, oh, here we go. The emotionally intelligent agent, as I said, you're going to use the tools that you learn in this class for all relationships that you have. We're really going to dive into how we use it with buyers and sellers today, as we work through transactions with them. And obviously when we're working with buyers and sellers, they're in a stressful time of their life. So it's really important for us to be the calm in the middle of that. And in order for us to do that, we've kind of got to understand what our trigger points are and what gets us, understanding our own emotions so that we can help control the process and everybody's emotions. So we're going to kind of dive in deep. This is a course that you are going to want to keep the workbook on and all the work in, because we're not going to be able to get to everything that they go through in here today. And it's an ongoing learning process that you all will want to continue to pull these worksheets out as you're working through different transactions with people, and kind of as you go through, they're going to get into all kinds of questions that you'll go through each part of the process, and how we're feeling, and then how we can calm it down. And as we know, it's different depending on, every single transaction is different. You've got different personalities involved, from the agent to the buyer and seller, and everybody involved in the transaction. So lenders, title companies. So So you may find that you want to make copies of some of this stuff and really kind of use it and work through it as you work with each client each time. And as you become more aware of your own emotions and the emotions that are swirling around you, this will become easier for you to do. So if you guys are ready, we're going to go ahead and launch into to the slides here. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, as I had stated earlier, the purpose of this course is to increase everyone's emotional intelligence and your awareness to build a thriving buying and selling experience for your clients. So again, as we go through here, we're going to kind of go through the buying process and the selling process and maybe all of the emotions that everybody's kind of going through as you go through the process. Just make sure I've allowed everybody in here. Okay, sorry about that. So upon completing this class, you should feel confident, although this is an ongoing learning experience, as I said, enough to incorporate some of the emotional intelligence sales strategies and best practices. And this is going to help you grow in your sales and be able to actually get, as we talk about listing and sales conversion, you know, you can prospect all you want, but you've got to get the process to settlement. So we're on page 3 of your workbook. And this is going to help you gain an understanding of what emotional intelligence is and the 5 core competencies. We'll dive into that. Concepts, ideas, and tools to understand and manage and use emotional intelligence. We're going to go into some deep exercises, as I stated before, to really challenge your thinking as you're going through the process and what emotions might be going on through that process for you, your buyers and sellers, and everybody else. There's some scripts in here to help with leveraging for emotional intelligence. And we're going to find some techniques to enhance and improve your emotional intelligence. This is, again, an ongoing learning experience that we will constantly learn and grow through. We're going to begin to build an emotional intelligence sales strategy to implement in your business. And then we're going to have a system to take away from the course to begin your day-to-day training with emotional intelligence. Let me try to see if I can get you guys up here. Okay. That's better. I can see you now. And as always, I want to tell you all, this is an interactive course. These are interactive courses. So we're going to hopefully share some ideas, some experiences that we've gone through ourselves, and maybe how we handled them and how we figure out how we could handle them better the next time. Let me just get Sandy in here. Okay, so we're going to understand today how to manage and use emotional intelligence throughout the real estate transaction. We're going to begin with understanding what emotional intelligence is, and then we're going to dive into some self-awareness for ourselves, some self-regulation, client implementation to begin building an emotional intelligence sales strategy for your business. So as we know, decisions are based on emotion. We always make decisions emotionally, whether we think we do or not, and then we justify logically. So many times you will find, and especially in a real estate transaction, you have that buyer who absolutely is so excited. They want to write an offer on that house, and they're doing it basically based on their emotions. And then only turn around to find that actually once they get into the home inspection and they find out more facts and details, that emotion changes, and they're either going to justify their emotional decision logically with that information, or they may change their mind because now the emotional part has passed, and now they're going to justify whatever they're doing more on logic. So we really need to understand when we're working with buyers and sellers, we're working with emotional human beings, and we obviously are human beings that have our own emotions as well. So why do we want to leverage emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is also called your emotional quotient, and it's defined as the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others. That's a big one that we have to work on a lot. Overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. We have to work on that a lot too, don't we? In a real estate transaction. So the focus of this course is to begin concentrating on your sales strategy toward understanding, managing, and using emotional intelligence. So we're going to start to understand our own emotions as well as those of others so that we can come at situations in a calm and clear way. The important thing to note is emotions are who we are. We are human beings and we're going to have emotions. There's no way that we can get out of that. You can't control that, but we can control the way we react to emotions. And that's what's really important and what we're going to kind of dive in here today on how we do that. So the 5 core competencies we're going to talk about here today with emotional intelligence is that number 1, we have to have empathy for people. We have to kind of understand where they're coming from. There's a social skill with emotional intelligence. How do we gain rapport with people and connect? Obviously, we need to be self-aware so that we understand where our emotions are coming from, and then we can also figure out where their emotions or the person that we're working with emotions are coming from. Self-regulation, this is a big one, and I think I wish every single real estate agent in the world would actually take this class because as we know, we're all emotional people, but we need to learn how to self-regulate those emotions as well as we're going through the process for the betterment of everybody in the process. And then we also we'll be talking a little bit about our motivation, because our motivations is what actually causes a lot of that emotional reaction. If we are really, really motivated to be honest and ethical throughout a transaction, and the person on the other side maybe isn't so much so, we can really get triggered. So we're going to talk about our core values and what our motivations are, as well as your clients. So when we get into these core competencies, is just what we just talked about. And this is where we're going to seek. Self-awareness is the seek to understand. Self-regulation is where we're going to learn how to manage that. The social skills and the empathy, we're going to use some of those skills as we go through the process. And then our motivation, we need to understand and use motivation as we go through the process. And again, emotion then turns into choices that we take, actions that happen, just like I talked about. We emotionally love a house when we write an offer and we make the choice to write the offer. And then sometimes the action that happens is, maybe I'm not going to actually go through with this because the emotions have died down now and I can really see that there's mold and everything else in this property or not. And ultimately, those things turn into our habits, our character, our destiny, and our legacy. If we come across constantly as being angry and aggressive and, kind of all about our client, not necessarily always looking at a win-win situation, that starts to define the habits that you make, the character that you have, the destiny and the legacy that people know you for. So that's why this is really important concept, at least in my mind, because we want to have an ongoing relationship with people in both in the industry and our clients, and continue to have clients. So, and these are the things that we're going to have a reputation with when we have emotional intelligence or not, as we increase those skills. Okay, and here I know you all just got the workbook last night or this morning. So I'm sure you did not have the chance to go through this pre-course self-evaluation. We're going to kind of go through some of these questions. You're on page 7 of your workbook now. And again, this is something that I want you guys to take back later and spend some time really going through. But we can kind of go through some of these questions a little bit right now. And if anybody wants to share some of the things that they're feeling or how they feel. But these are the things that are really going to help you become self-aware of how you react in certain situations. And it's very personal and everybody's going to be different. So 1, how do you react to others? Do you tend to judge others at first glance, or do you take the time to get to know people? Again, these are introspective, self-aware questions. So just think about that. When you see somebody, do you immediately judge what they're wearing, how they act, what kind of car they drive, whatever it is? Or do you kind of take time to ask questions and get to know someone? How do you?
I think sometimes I have been working really hard on not judging, because I think we all do it to some extent, no matter how hard you try not to. So I think there's always that initial judgment, but trying to take a step back afterwards and say, okay, wait, whoa. And trying to get to know them, because you just don't know.
Right.
So I'll never forget. I think when I first got into real estate, I was working as the administrative assistant, and this guy walked in, and he was dressed in overalls. He was dirty. He'd just come off the farm, and you would have thought this guy has nothing. This guy ended up owning, I think, like 6 farms, multi-millionaire, and you never, from the pickup truck he drove up in and the way he was dressed, you would have never in a million years guessed that.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
I learned early on not to make snap judgments.
Right. And I'll never forget the story of and I know I've shared this with many of you guys many times, of the agent that was sitting on a Caribbean island in a real estate office. And this guy comes in, he's scruffy, he's got long hair, same thing, in old beat up shorts and shoes, and comes in, and he's interested in potentially looking at some property, and the real estate agent totally blew him off and thought that, we're talking millions of dollars of properties here. And so she kind of blew him off, and the guy left. And then the person in the back comes out and says, "Oh my God, that was Bill Gates. What did he want? I can't believe he was here." Yeah, never judge.
The other thing that I would say is you never know what kind of day somebody is having. So just because they come in all grumpy and upset or whatever, that might not be their real character. So you really never know what's going on in their life.
Correct. There's a great Darren Hardy video that talks about somebody walking into the elevator and the little bubble over everybody's head of what they're thinking. One is, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm just starting this new job today." One is, "Oh my God, my kids were sick. I don't know if I'm going to get the phone call this afternoon because I'm going to have to go get them." And so, yeah, every single person, you're right, Ryan, you just don't know what's going on in someone's world. How do you act in the work environment? Do you give others a chance to shine, or do you claim all the recognition yourself? There's a lot of times when we may be in the middle of a transaction with a buyer agent or something on the other side, and we always want to be right. But that doesn't always work so well. We need to make sure we get along with everybody. How do you react in stressful situations? Do you keep your emotions under control? So we're going to talk about that a little bit as we go through. Do you take responsibility for your reactions, or do you shift blame to others? I'm always as you guys know, many of you know that I teach the 100% responsibility class. That's the #1 success principle. We are 100% responsibility for what goes on in our day. Sure, sometimes it can be somebody did something that was irresponsible or not respectful, but we are responsible for how we react to those things. And if something happens and you did something, hey, we all make mistakes. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake and I'll do better next time. but it's never any good to blame somebody else for maybe something that you were responsible for. So there's a whole lot more questions in your workbook. We only covered a few on the slide there. And again, we can spend probably a whole day class on just these questions, but this is something that I want you all to pull out, pages 7 and 8, and really kind of go through those questions so that you can understand your own emotions, because we can't control how we handle situations or relationships if we don't understand ourselves. Anybody else want to share anything on there? Number 7 in your workbook, though, I do want to just mention that. Are you aware of your limitations as well as your personal strengths? There are a ton of personality profiles out there to look at. The DISC profile, you've got the Enneagram, you've got Myers-Briggs. There's tons of different personality profiles out there. And I think you will find if you took them all, you're going to find the same strengths and weaknesses through any of those personality profiles. So it really is important for you to know what you're good at and what your limitations are. We can't be good at everything. And so, sit down and kind of think about that, because we need to know when we need to delegate or what we're good at or what we may need to maybe improve on a little bit. So again, I want you all to take some time after today and kind of go through those questions, because you can't start to understand others until we understand ourselves. And this is where we're talking about self-awareness. So what we're going to do, detect and recognize an oncoming emotion, identify and define what that emotion might be, and then understand and recognize the root of the emotion and anticipate the impact. So I know we all have triggers. I have triggers. Everybody has triggers. When somebody comes at you in a certain way, you might get triggered. And you got to understand pretty quickly, whoa, what am I feeling here? And it's okay, I've got this emotion, but how am I going to react to that emotion? And I'm going to identify, am I happy? Am I sad? Am I mad? Am I just disappointed? There's going to be all kinds of different things that we go through, and our buyers go through, or buyers and sellers go through as well. And then we need to understand the root of that emotion. And we've all gone through lifetime experiences where something that makes me mad, Crystal may not make Crystal mad at all. She might be like, what are you getting all in an uproar about? And it's just because I'm triggered by something that maybe happened in my childhood or in a different relationship, or as Ryan said, I'm just having a bad day today, I'm not feeling well, or whatever it is. We need to start to figure that out and understand where that's coming from so we can fix it, right? So on page 9 of your workbook, I love Brene Brown. If you all haven't read any of her stuff yet, I know Peggy has. Understanding emotions in others and communicate our understanding of these emotions require us to be in touch with our own feelings. It's important for you to begin the journey into emotional intelligence that you first understand and become in touch with your feelings, because emotions guide our decisions and we have to really be self-aware of where we're coming from. So where do we start? So on page 10 in your workbook, you're going to see we're going to talk about this clear way of understanding or self-awareness all throughout this course. So when we get into a situation, let's think clear. So the number one thing, am I in a calm state of mind? I think this is really important because I know we tend to get emotionally involved with our clients sometimes, and we're overwhelmed and we only have so much time in our day, and we may pick up the phone when we're feeling a certain emotion and not be calm about it, and that just starts a whole train wreck of emotions down the line. So when we find ourselves triggered or upset because of something going on in a transaction, or the way that a client has approached us, or a way another agent has approached us, a lender, any of those things going through the process, sometimes we need to step back and take a deep breath. And am I in a calm state of mind before I approach this issue? Level-headed. Do I feel level-headed or neutral? You know, there's always two sides to every story. I get this from you all the time. Somebody will call and complain, and I haven't heard your side of the story yet. So I know that I'm not going to get all in an uproar about something that's going on until maybe I hear the other side of the story. Am I in an emotionally charged situation? We find ourselves as real estate agents, we're in emotionally charged situations a lot, right? You got a seller who's mad because a buyer wants more repairs done in the house, and they've already given them X amount of money for closing cost help. We've got people who are emotionally attached to their property, and someone insults it in some way. So, we're in an emotionally charged situations all the time. Nick, I know you and I were just dealing with one recently where the agent wasn't as experienced and didn't really handle the situation well in a rent back walkthrough. That turned into an emotionally charged situation because the agent herself wasn't calm, level-headed, and clear walking through that situation. Then we need to think about our approach. What's my approach here? Stop and think through it a little bit before we pick up that phone and make the phone call. What's my approach going to be? And then am I ready to respond? Because obviously you've got a person on the other side and you've done all this work, right? And you've figured out how you're going to approach it. You're calm, you're level-headed, but the person's going to come at you with something, good, bad, or ugly. And so you need to also then be ready to respond. Am I ready to positively respond, or am I going to get triggered all over again and come back in an aggressive way? Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
I will say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I will say a lot of that does kind of relate to the social media type mindset of, you don't want to make up some angry post and then just throw it up. You don't want to be pictured as that person, So really it's about thinking before you act. So,
Absolutely, Ryan. And so many times when we communicate with email or text and the person isn't really in front of you, it's easy to rip off some nasty email or text to somebody. and
it's instant too, is the other thing. That's the other dangerous part about that, is that it's so easy to just click send, so.
Yep. And I always have this thing of, if I'm in an emotionally charged situation, many times I will write the email and don't hit send, and I will take some time and I come back later and I'll read it again. Or I'll have somebody that I know, love, and trust read it and say, how does this sound? How is this going to come across? I know you guys a lot of times will send me an email and just say, hey, can you just review this before I send it to see, how it's going to be. And that's what we're here for too. So you're 100% right. And if we end up getting into a situation because we just hit that send button.
Sandy, I've been learning how to, I guess control myself or understand my reactions over when I'm texting and receiving texts, because things can be so misconstrued and misunderstood, and they don't translate well on text. And just yesterday I had a conversation with a buyer, and then at 1 o'clock in the, well, I didn't see it till this morning, but at 1 o'clock last night, she texted me and did a 360 on what we had talked about. So we texted twice back and forth. And then I thought, needs a conversation. So I called her. Well, it turned out that she was texting from a cabin with poor, internet access. And the text was like 2 days old. So it actually was from prior to our conversation. So in fact, she hadn't changed her mind at all. I just never got the text until 2 days after. So that's been kind of an enlightening experience for me to realize, not everything can be accepted as face value, in this world that we're in.
Right.
Yeah, I want to throw my hat in there. Yeah, I personally, I've grown up on texting. I've only communicated by texting all through since middle school, high school, whatever, no phone calls. And it's just really different. You can get a basic understanding, but I've learned that you really need to call someone. Texting is great, but calling someone is so much better. Hearing their voice is so invaluable, and seeing facial expressions too. That's why I like Zoom or meeting in person is so valuable to me, because texting you can figure out basic level, but for me it really built understanding of how important facial expressions and how someone's talking, how their voice is, how fast they're talking, like really simple things that you don't pick up on if it's a text message. So
yep.
And if you do those back to the profile, scenario that you had talked about earlier, if you know your profile, your personality profile, and mine is very relational, I have to get that one-on-one. In fact, the texting I've noticed instantly irritates me. And it's a fine line between knowing how I communicate and how does my client want to communicate.
Right.
But I'm in charge of myself, and I have to control how I react to things. But I need that interaction. So voice is very important.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge who you're communicating with too, because for me, some people I love to text some people, but then other people I have to call them. I know I have to call them, otherwise I'm not. Yeah, so it's such a big, even though there's like a huge convenience factor, calling is definitely recommended for some people. I will say that.
And the one thing that I would suggest too, because I know this drives certain agents crazy too. If someone has called you, call them back. Don't just text them back. If someone's texted you, then sure, maybe you text back. Maybe you text the person back and say, hey, I can't talk right now, but I will call you in a bit. But I always think it's good to communicate back the way that you were communicated to. So, and ask your client at the beginning of the process, how do you like to be communicated to? Text, phone call? But you're right. If an email or a text is going back and forth and there's a lack of understanding, you got to pick up the phone. So we're all clear. So in your actual workbook, again, this is something for you all to go back and look through later. Pages 10 and 11 really talk about all the different emotions that we as human beings go through, and in different categories. So when we're happy, these are some of the emotions that we may feel: free and joyful and successful and confident. When we're surprised, we may feel startled or confused, eager or energetic. When we're sad, hurt, depressed, inferior, empty. The angry, we deal with that a lot. Sad and angry, we deal with a lot with clients because they're really going through an emotional time in their lives. And we also have all of these things that kind of go through. So as we go through the process, this is kind of a good worksheet for you to kind of keep. And I would keep this clear piece maybe posted right on your bulletin board somewhere or something, wherever you're making your phone calls. just to kind of go through it again when you're in that emotionally charged situation, just to say, am I clear? Am I calm? Am I level-headed? This is probably an emotionally charged situation. What's my approach and how I'm going to respond? So you can kind of think through it before you get into it. And then again, what am I feeling? So when we go through these feelings, there's a chart that just kind of can help you with, yeah, actually that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm a little angry and I'm feeling, you know, in that anger, I'm feeling indignant. I'm feeling ridiculed, hostile, so we can really start to understand what our feelings are and then how we react to it. So that's a great piece for you to keep out as well. So now we're going to kind of work through the understanding. So this is kind of working through the process of working with a buyer, and then we're going to kind of work through working with a seller. And again, we're not going to go through each of these detailed things because this would take several hours, but this is a good worksheet and an exercise for you all to do before you're getting ready to meet with a new client. Okay, you've asked them to meet into the office. So what might they be feeling? And then what are you feeling? And again, this can be different for every single transaction that you do. You're meeting in the office, that person may be excited or scared. And for you, if it's a brand new person that you've never met before, you may be feeling a little scared yourself or a little anxious because you don't know this person and how they're going to react. But maybe it's a good friend of yours who's coming in to meet in the office to kind of start the buyer process. You're going to feel happy and excited. So each situation we're going to find is going to be a little different. Moving to the conference room, are we comfortable or uncomfortable? We really need to kind of be feeling that buyer situation, even if it's a good friend of yours. They're anxious, they're scared, they don't know how this process always goes. So when we're building that rapport, we need to have some empathy with that. What are they feeling? And let's make a connection. And there's going to be some questions and things as we get into the course here that help you with that, making that connection. We want to set the tone, and then kind of get how are they feeling. And you'll find this especially a lot when you have couples, because one may be feeling one way and another's feeling another way. You've got maybe, Mrs. Buyer who's really excited and is ready to move and get her kids all settled, and Mr. Buyer who's freaking out about the financial hardship of this or the stress of this. So really, it's really kind of cool to go through this, all of these processes that we go through when we meet with a buyer or seller and kind of figure out what they might be feeling as we go through each of the processes. Anybody want to share anything with that?
Yeah, I know. So psychologically, when somebody is entering into a brand new space, they are naturally much more on guard, much more cautious, much more, uncomfortable. So it is kind of important to really try and put their mind at ease. So whether that's a new spaces of just being in your office, that is a new space to them. So psychologically, that's just already in the back of their mind. Like that's just how we're programmed. So it is important to realize that, I think.
Yep. And so if you go to page 12 and 13, that really kind of goes through the entire process of working with your buyer. And then the same thing with working with the seller. And sellers are completely, a different animal, and there's going to be different emotions that they're going through when they're selling. And a lot of times sellers are also buying. So you got both of those components in there. But when you're asking pre-listing questions, what's the client feeling like? Anxious? Are they going to be able to get what they want for their house? Are they going to have to do a lot of work? Are they feeling maybe a little bit overwhelmed because they've got to do some things to get ready? Are they anxious because of where they're going and why are they moving? And then what are you feeling when you're walking in? For us, many times, I think on the selling side or the listing side, we're kind of, buyers tend to come to us and they're ready to go and they're ready to work with us. Whereas when you're on the listing side, you're really going in for more of a job interview, right? So we need to recognize our own emotions on that too. And are we a little bit more anxious? What are our strengths and weaknesses and limitations? How are we coming through? Because it's a totally different situation. Again, with sellers, we're more on a job interview. Buyers, yes, somewhat on a job interview, but usually when they're coming into the office to sit down, they're ready to buy and they're going to move forward. A listing, they may be interviewing 5 agents and you just don't know. So I think you will find that your own emotions are very different on the buy side versus the listing side. And this kind of just really goes through all of the process for each of those things too. And how are you feeling and how are you reacting? Any questions on that or before we move to the next? Okay, so now as we kind of dive deeper into self-awareness, many of when I talked about before, what motivates us and how we react to things, we've had, experiences in our entire lives that, help us to react in different ways based on our previous experiences. And also on your level of motivation. And as this is kind of, we go through this in all of these momentum classes, but how motivated are you? So sometimes we want something. Hey, we'd all love to have $1 million, right? And we can talk about that all day long, but if we don't take any action, then there's a lack of motivation there. And we may be working with a buyer or a seller as well who may want to move or want to sell their house, but they're not really ready to take action. They're not willing to do the things that they need to do to get their house ready. They may want to, price their house some ridiculous amount and say, well, if I get it, great. If not, I'm not going anywhere. So it's important to kind of understand our motivation, but also the seller or buyer's motivation. Because if we have a buyer or a seller that is just in this want category, but they're not really willing to take any action, you got a buyer who doesn't want to talk to a lender, right? They're not really a buyer. So it's important for us to find out what the motivation is too. A desire, that's when you want to move toward the path as long as it's easy. If you don't have to get outside of your comfort zone, it's easy and convenient and comfortable, you have a desire and you're going to do that. As we know, when business comes easily to us, we love that. It's a referral. You don't have to pick up the phone and actually prospect. Hey, that's great. But we also have clients that are in that desire mode. They're willing to do it. They're willing to do the work. And if they can put their house on the market and get 10 offers on it tomorrow and they don't have to do anything, great. There's a desire to sell there. They're in that desire mode. But if they actually have to do something, then that may be a little bit more difficult for them. So this is again, just a self-awareness and where I am with different things and different aspects of my life. When we get to the passion part, that's when I really want this to happen and I'm willing to do what it needs to take. I'm willing to get outside of my comfort zone and make that video. Charlotte, we had our video class the other week and Charlotte sent me a video last night and she did a phenomenal job on it. I was so proud of her, but it was hard for her. She didn't want to do it, but she stepped outside of her comfort zone and did a phenomenal job with her video. So she had the passion to get out there and willing to step outside of her comfort zone to get it done. And then we get into the obsession. That's a bad thing. When we become obsessed with something, now we've let it totally take over our lives. And it's an unhealthy way and nothing else matters. And then you start to neglect other areas. We've seen a lot of people get into you know, a lot of careers turn into obsessions, and then your family life fails, or, you know, your relationships with other people, other agents, that kind of thing. So where we kind of want to be is in this desire to passion place. And so it's really important for us to recognize too ourselves. And if we go through these, as we go through these different emotions, where are we? And recognizing that as well, because those are our motivators. And again, these are other motivators. Do we have kids that we're trying to get through college? People are in different places in their lives. Are their families and friends a more important part of their lives now their kids are grown and gone? And your physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental, those are all the aspirations that we have, the time and money that we need, which again, if we're passionate, we're going to fill the time and money needed for these things that we want in our life. And then of course that makes the income and the money available. So what are we motivated? Our own self-awareness and where we are with where we want to be. Any questions on that? And again, our clients are going to be in those different spaces too. Okay, so steps for continued self-awareness and improvement. Again, now we're on page 16 of your workbook. So again, you know, as I talked about before, this is going to be a class that we're going to go through this information, but you're going to want to take the information and then work on it after class, because this is going to be an ongoing process. Begin implementing the CLE questions. Am I clear? Am I calm? Am I level-headed? And am I in an emotionally charged situation? So really start thinking about that as a daily practice, and practice each of these questions as you navigate scenarios throughout your day. And one way for you to kind of have an aha moment, if you find you just got off a phone call and you're pissed and you just got triggered, go back here. Was I calm when I made the call? Was I calm when I was picking up the call and I saw who was calling? I got caller ID. I know who's on the other end. Am I ready for that phone call? And am I going to be calm, level-headed? And is this an emotionally charged situation? Daily journaling. This is really, I think, a great way to become more self-aware. So if you went on a listing appointment the day before and it didn't quite go your way, things didn't turn out the way that you wanted to, even if you got the listing, but you still feel like maybe there's some tension there about the price of the property or repairs that need to be done or whatever it is, you know, hey, how did that go? What happened yesterday? What might I have done differently? And what would I do differently tomorrow, the next time I go on a listing appointment, or maybe even the next time I talk to this client, so that I can improve on that. So just, you know, keep a little worksheet and a daily journal, or even if you just think about it through, you know, your mind and make a few notes as you go through. And then daily intentional self-reflection, meditation. Focus on spending some intentional time every day reflecting on your motivations and values. Evaluate the choices that you made based on the emotions that you encountered, right? Did we do something when we were a little mad? Did we do something when we were a little sad or depressed? Did we do something when we were optimistic and happy? And how did all that turn out? And then evaluate how that works. And did you clear space of mind? This is where, you know, and again, we've had Darren Hardy and Insane Productivity and some of the other classes that we've done, where it's really, really, really important to turn off the phone, turn off the social media, turn off the music in the car sometimes. You know, try to find a few minutes every day where you can just have quiet time, because we get bombarded with so much every day, all the time, that we don't have time to clear out the cobwebs, and then we tend to react emotionally or you know, reflectively, you know, reactionarily, I guess I should say. So, a goal and a key to becoming more self-aware is to allow yourself some quiet time so you can truly take some time out to feel how you're feeling. And then again, identify and write out your motivators and drivers. What is your North Star and why are you doing this? Do you want to get that listing because you want to put a certain amount of money away for retirement? Do you need to get your kids through college? Are you ready to buy your second home or whatever it is? So, what are some of the things that are motivating you as well? And don't let that get mixed in with what somebody else may be motivated for too. Any questions or comments on that?
Yeah, I will say that I highly recommend taking some time to use like the quiet time. I started doing that 6 or 7 months ago, and my mood throughout the day has improved pretty good. Especially during the COVID times, where everyone's always super stressed and there's always something on your mind. Having that time to really just not have anything coming in, just thinking to yourself is really important. That's why whenever I exercise, I never listen to music, just because I always use it as time to think. And I started turning off the radio in the car, and I just drive in silence now, and it really gives me time to think. And it's really nice, and I would really recommend it.
Yep, I do the same thing, Ryan. Sometimes I don't, but there are a lot of times I just turn it off, and it's 15 minutes for me to get to work with nothing, just silence. And the same with going home. You kind of decompress both ways going through your day. So, and I saw a commercial the other day. Now, especially during the pandemic, more and more of the meditation apps that are out there. I love Oprah and Deepak Chopra. They have great meditation series that you can use, and it's based on different, topics. There's one called Calm out there that, is just quiet. It's just a few minutes of hearing a rainfall or a waterfall or fire crackling or something like that. So there's a lot of great apps out there too, that if you want to, if you find it hard for you just to kind of decompress and be quiet yourself, some of those apps are helpful as well. Just turn off the noise for a little bit. Get off social media, turn your phone off, leave your phone someplace, go for a walk, whatever it is. It's really important to unplug. Now we get into the self-regulation. So we've talked about becoming self-aware. So now we're self-aware. What is that emotion that we're feeling? What is it that, what is our motivator? What is our desire? And now we have to regulate that and manage it, correct? So it's the ability to control one's feelings and impulses in order to prevent negatively disrupting emotional states of others. This ability also dictates how well a person can emotionally adapt to changing situations. We really, really have to do this as real estate agents because it changes all the time. It changes daily. Again, there's different people in the process. There's different properties. There's, you've got agents, you've got lenders. Something happens on a day-to-day basis that you weren't expecting. So it's really important for us to kind of continue to go through that self-regulation. This is how we're going to react now that we know. And we're going to go back through. I told you we're going to relive this several times, the clear thinking. So now we're getting into the self-regulation. Are we calm? Are we level-headed? Are we in an emotionally charged situation? And then the self-regulation is, how am I going to approach this, right? And then am I ready to respond? So these are the things that, so self-regulation managed. So the next time you face an undesirable emotion, ask yourself, what is my response what's gonna happen with my response? It's kind of like Ryan just said, am I gonna just hit send on that email? And then what's gonna happen? What's gonna be the backlash? Maybe I need to stop and reread it before I hit send. How's it gonna affect everyone around me? If the answer is yes, or even potentially yes, reconfigure the approach to be a more effective response that leverages your self-awareness growth. Establishing clear mindfulness and awareness of your emotions puts you in a mindset. And again, I know we all get triggered, and there are definitely times when you just want to call that person up and you only have a couple minutes sometimes and you need to take care of it. Take a few seconds to calm. How's this backlash gonna come at me when I react that way? So this is our self-regulation part of it.
I can add to that, Sandy. This time last year, my brother, well, yeah, it was pre-COVID. He had Thanksgiving with most of my family. It was over probably close to 40 people. And I have this weird thing about me. I love carving the turkey. Like I love it. So that has been my job the last several years. So having 3 brothers, right? And I also have 3 sisters, but my brothers during the holidays intentionally try, and they're adult men, to irritate me. So my 60-year-old brother comes behind me as I'm cutting the turkey, and he's just, on purpose trying to get me to jump or to snap or something. And, I was very calm, and he's done this every year, and every year I get better and better at it. And so that last year, I was very calm. And then later on I said, you do that every Thanksgiving. And he goes, what? And I said, you try to agitate me just to see how far you can push me. And he goes, I do? I'm sorry. I never knew I did that before. And I'm like, yeah, you do it every year. And he's like, I'm really sorry. I won't do it anymore. But I mean, there's that little part of you that wants to bite,
Mm-hmm.
So so all of this we can apply to personal life too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those people that we live with 24/7 can tend to, do little irritating things that, and really sometimes it's just like you said, Sandy, you just communicate it. They don't even know that they're actually bugging you with whatever it is they're doing. But as soon as you communicate, it's like, oh, okay, self-awareness.
Yeah, he thought it was real funny.
Yeah. And you didn't.
I didn't.
Right. So, sometimes we're going to talk a little bit about empathy. Put yourself in your client's shoes and how they may be feeling. So when we start to react. So here's some typical responses to criticism, and we all can kind of go down this road. Number one, we kind of want to defend ourselves. Hey, I didn't do that. I did this because, or we make excuses. Maybe we minimize the problem. We attempt to rationalize, sidestep the issue. I don't know how many times I've worked in a transaction where the lending portion of it is going south, and you're trying to call the lender, and the lender is just not answering your calls. They have sidestepped the issue, and you're not getting in touch with anybody anymore. And so, or we shift the blame. So those are just natural human responses that we have sometimes when, somebody comes up to us with criticism. So again, we need to ask ourselves, how would my client feel if I took a typical response to a situation during the home buying or selling process? Could I potentially lose their business or trust? So, a seller comes to you and they're mad because they don't like the pictures that you put up out on the internet. Yet you've paid a lot of money and you've had some professional person out there to take really great pictures. So let's stop. Okay, what is it? Maybe we stop and ask the question, well, maybe it's just one picture in there that they didn't like, or one angle or something. But instead, you're getting all mad and defensive. Well, tell me about that. What is it that you don't like about the pictures? Is it lighting? Tell me stop and ask the questions, right? And before we just jump in and get defensive, how would we feel? And are we going to potentially lose their business or trust? All right. So we're on page 19. And business should not be confused for busyness. As our productivity increases, we spread ourselves thin and attempt to accomplish our goals. So again, this is self-regulation and management. Many times we have to delegate things, correct? Many times we have to prioritize things. And we go through this a lot again in our Insane Productivity and Brian Buffini class, all of those things that we've taken to make sure that we're concentrating on the things that we need to do and not just be busy. We want to be productive, right? And when we start to manage when we start to be just busy and fill our time and become not as productive, that's when we're not also self-managing ourselves. And that's when we may become overwhelmed. And that's may also be the time when we don't take the time when we're going to respond to something to clear think. Am I calm? Am I level-headed? The busier we get, the more likely it is we're going to just jump in there and try to do something without taking the time out. So this is also self-regulation and management. Do not spread yourself so thin that you don't have the time to go through the process correctly. Anybody have any comments on that? Kaz, are you still there? Are you still eating your oatmeal? You seem really quiet today.
I am still here. I am absorbing everything. I'm like the poster child for all of these things. So.
Well, good. It's just not like you to be so quiet.
I'm actually, I have actually really worked on this, like for this entire COVID thing. Like, obviously we've all had a lot of like time to reflect. Some of you guys have not had any time to reflect because you've been so busy, but I have not been. But I have thought about a lot of this stuff, which is why I was excited that we had this class. I mean, for the most part, I've realized that I am a very emotional person, and I'm Italian. I guess that's where it comes from. My whole family, we all wear our emotions on our sleeves, and I just generally, like, I'm not afraid to say I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. I get my feelings hurt, and I have learned that, like, sometimes, it's good to understand that and know that, people are sometimes they don't mean to hurt your feelings, and they do. And sometimes they do mean to hurt your feelings. And, I have, as much as, I think the best thing that I've learned to do is just to kind of completely, disassociate, like just completely disassociate. And, it's like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But, like I have had, I had clients that basically lied to me, and I lost, like $15,000 commission or the $450,000 home or whatever, because they basically lied to me. And that the unfriend button is really easy to hit. Like, you can just literally like unfriend somebody and just say, you know what, it was a good relationship while it lasted. But at this time, at this point, it's like just better to move on and make new relationships with people that won't do that. Sometimes people, their intentions aren't always, true, or their family is going to take priority over your relationship with them. Like, it's just the way that it is. Right. So for those things, I've just learned to try to disassociate as much as I can. And I'm a student of all this stuff literally every single day. So I'm taking it all in.
Good. Well, and I think that the more we work on ourselves, and the more emotionally intelligent we become, you do start to see who are you hanging out with, and who are the people who respect you, who are the people that you want to be with. And again, we come at it at an abundance mentality of, I don't need to work with everybody. If I have somebody who really doesn't respect me, who we're just not the right fit, who isn't going to, those motivators are morals, who isn't going to be honest and ethical and do the things that, that mean something to you, or lie or cheat or any of those things, you can just not get upset. You don't take, the more emotionally intelligent I think we become, you don't get upset, you don't take it personally. We just say next and move on. And you hope that that person at some point does some of this kind of work, and maybe that they can be in a different place at a different time in their lives too. So
yeah, absolutely.
When I first got into the business, I took everything personally. And I mean, there were times where I had clients that just disappeared. They stopped taking my calls. They didn't answer my emails. And I, of course, thought, oh my God, what did I do? What? And I took it very personally. And there was one lady I met, probably 3 years later. I saw her in the grocery store, and, I said, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, what happened? And she goes, I was so embarrassed. I lost my job. And it was, I was like, oh, it was something horrible that happened in her life. And she was just too embarrassed to tell me that she couldn't move forward. And so she just stopped answering. And that's happened a couple times. And so I learned early on, well, not early on, it probably took me a good 5 years to start growing a thicker skin.
Mm-hmm.
And develop that and not let it get to me. And every once in a while it still does. There's stuff that will happen that it gets to me, but it just takes some time, and you will learn not to take it personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to rewrite 42 years of genetic programming at this point. I do come by it like really, really honestly. But the fact of the matter is that, I think that's a great point, that you make, Peggy, because, there are other things sometimes that go on behind the scenes that you don't know.
Right.
I don't know. It's hard. I'm very conscientious of, deal falls through. Like, I'm very conscientious of what the other agent is thinking at this point. And like, I do worry about all that stuff. Is my reputation going to be, tarnished because this client now that I thought was a good friend of mine was dishonest with me. I had no control of it. So I'm trying to work through those things and be aware of, of why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. Believe it or not, Sherry is like a huge Brené Brown follower, and she's really helped me a lot. She's really said to me okay, let's take a second, and let's understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, all the things that are in this class. So it's really, interesting in that way. But I'm a student of this stuff every single day at this point. And it's been good for me. You don't learn how to manage necessarily your emotions so well in the military. It's kind of just, fire and forget, do what I say because I say it. And there's not, there's no room really to challenge, anything or to get your feelings hurt, but this is all good stuff. So love it.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you, Kaz, I'm Irish. So I used to have a temper. I mean, a really bad, and I would snap. And it's taken me many years to get that under control and be able to take a step back and, look at it from a different perspective. But, in the case that you were talking about, if you explain to the other agent what happened, they've all, unless they're brand new, they've all had something crazy like that happen to them at some point in time. And if they haven't, they're going to.
Right.
And, stuff like that happens. I mean, in January, it'll be 18 years for me. And I've had some of the most bizarre stuff happen. And most agents are going to get it. But, you know, if you just take a minute, give them a call, explain it, you know, they'll be like, okay, I get it. And it's not going to hurt your reputation. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I never want anybody to feel like, you know, like I'm being dishonest or I didn't do anything, you know, the everything that I could possibly do. And sometimes you just can't control it. And then on the flip side, you know, you're like, why can't these people that were my friends, why don't they understand that my reputation, you know, is very important, and that, you know, that they're potentially impacting my, you know, my relationship with other agents, which is going to make it harder for my buyers in the future. You know, so it's a process, but you know, yeah, I think you know, it's coming from somebody who's been in it, a survivor for 18 years. You know, to hear that you know, that's a normal part of the process, because I still, you know, wake up and feel like I'm a brand new, you know, I'm a new agent. Like every morning I feel like that, you know, so, and I learn something new generally every day.
So, believe me, even after 18 years, so do I.
Mm-hmm.
Something different happens. Every transaction's different. There's something in every single transaction. I'm in Lisa's office all the time. All the time. And if Lisa's not there, then I'm on the phone with Sandy.
And you know, a little dose of getting bit in the butt is good for all of us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
A little bit of humble pie never hurt.
It goes a long way. It helps. It builds character, and you know, so, and it's, you know, this is the industry that everybody has experienced it more than once. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it's a perfect growth opportunity.
Exactly.
Love you guys.
So one of my favorite expressions, Kaz, is don't kill the messenger. So sometimes when I call an agent and I know the news is not going to be what they want to hear, but I'm representing my client, and I'll just say, hey, don't kill the messenger. I'm just relaying information.
You are so good at that too. The transaction that you took over for, so good at doing that, and keeping, you know, your emotions out of it and literally just relaying information from one side to the other. To me, I still very much struggle with that. To me, like, you know, I connect with people and I kind of form this relationship. I don't even think that a lot of people want that relationship, but I make it myself, like, you know, with my clients, and I do get personally invested in it. You know, even though I try so hard, you know, to keep things, you know, to keep things even keel, you know, it still is personal to me. I want the best for my people, you know, and I represent them fiercely. If you can't say anything else about me, you can say that, but not always the best methodology.
And just to go back to what Peggy had said about, you know, having clients that you think dissed you or, you know, just disappeared or whatever. I don't know how many times I had my own story about what happened, and we make up our own story.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out that's not what. I had a client whose mother passed away one time. Right. They hadn't gotten back with me. It's like, well, I didn't know, you know?
Yeah.
So it's many times you've made up this story. And so if I can say anything, is that we try to live in the present moment. Just stay focused in the present and try not to make up some story. It's when we call fear, false expectations appearing real. We can all get caught up in thinking something's going to happen in the future, or that you know, this is what's going on because we've made up this own story in our head, and it's not right. It's our story that we made up. It's not their story at all. So yeah, that's something that I've had to work on myself through the years of, let's stay in the present moment. I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to make up some big story because I don't know, but you know, let's wait and find out what happened.
Just as an example, the first potential buyer that I'm talking to, she didn't answer me for like a week and a half, and I called her again, and then she answered and she said, hey, sorry, my husband is studying for his master's program. And it's like, oh, so he had all of his finals that coming week. So she's like, yeah, we just have zero time. They have a kid too. Like, we have zero time. We just can't talk right now. We can push it back like a couple weeks after Thanksgiving. So I mean, that's a perfect example. Like, the very first person I go to talk to that something like that happens, and then I'm like, oh well, guess that's out. So I kind of just wrote it off. So yeah, you really never know.
We don't know, right? So self-regulation, these are continued things that we're going to continue to do to improve on. And again, this is an ongoing process. Further assess daily reflection, journaling. Reflect on your daily journaling. How could I have handled it differently? What would I have done differently? Intentional meditation. We talked about that. Even 10 to 15 minutes, turn off the music in the car, just be quiet for a few minutes. Sometimes even focusing on how you want something to come out, visualize it. And implement the A question. How am I going to approach it? You know, let's stop and think about it, be calm, level-headed, and then how do I really want to approach this before I just jump in and hit send, right? All right. And again, this is the client approach. And now we're talking about the ready to respond. So we are now on page 21 of your workbook. So the key to clear and client implementation is focusing on the response, taking the understanding of the oncoming emotion, translating that awareness into an approach and technique or strategy. So now we're going to kind of work on, now we're calm, we're level-headed. Are we in an emotionally charged situation? And then what's going to be our approach? And now how do we respond? So these are each step of the sales prospect of how we might want to respond. So building the relationship, compliment their emotions. Hey, I understand that, this is your first time you're buying a house. You may be a little bit anxious. That's totally normal. Everybody feels that way at first. Kind of feel the energy of the room and compliment. Hey, that's totally normal. You should be feeling that way. Plan ahead so that we know what we're going to go through. And then develop a back pocket question. And we're going to go through that a little bit as we get further into the course, some of the questions that we might ask. They actually give you examples for that. Be open and curious. Clear away the clutter. I will tell you that, and I think it's Darren Hardy that talks about before you go into an appointment, you just take the trash can and throw everything in the trash. If you've just gotten off the phone with something and you got this thing in your head about this last transaction that you just did, and you still got that going on, stop before you walk into the room and get that out of your mind. Again, be in the present moment with these people now as you walk through that door, because if not, you're distracted and you didn't hear half of what they said. So building that relationship is a lot harder if your mind is still on the last transaction or last thing you did. So try to clear away the clutter. And as I talked about before, try to feel the emotion in the room. Is everybody quiet? Can you feel tension between the parties? Do they feel excited? Is there some anger going on there? So, again, when you clear that clutter and then you're going to be open and curious so you can find out more too. Meet the need, avoid giving mixed signals. Are we going to go out and show property, or do we need you to get qualified first? Sometimes agents get all excited and they're all ready to go out and show property, but we haven't gone through the process yet. So let's take the time back, and this is how it goes. And we need to be in control of that. Align your intention with the impact and enhance your communication style. So again, these are just ways that we're going to go into that a little bit more with some of the questions and things. As we get through the course. Jump the hurdles, step into their shoes. How might they be feeling? See the whole picture. And a lot of times, especially when you have couples, you got one person who's saying everything that they want, but the other person's kind of quiet. So it's really important for you to bring that person out too, as to, well, what are you looking for as well? And know what pushes your buttons. We've just been talking about that. You know, if somebody's going to come at you aggressively in a listing appointment, somebody's going to attack your commission, and you know, that just pushes your buttons. Be ready for that, because you're going to have to deal with responding to that. And then again, ask for the sale, leaning into your discomfort. Take control of your own self-talk. Oh my gosh, did I just blow this whole appointment because they're being really quiet right now? Well, maybe they're just thinking about it and they need to think about it. And then make timing everything. So again, you want to get back with people in a timely fashion. You want to ask for the sale at the time of the appointment and don't wait until later. All of those things that we can kind of help us with that rapport as we go through. So this is something that I want you guys to work on after the class. I know we've been here for a while, and again, this is something that you kind of need to take some time and go through. So what is the intent? So just as an example, and as we go through this, but then again, I want you guys to pull pages 22 or page 22 out and really talk about, well, what is your intent? When you're complimenting someone's emotions, what is your intent? I would say, you know, my intent, if I'm complimenting the person's emotion, is to make them feel comfortable. I want them to feel relaxed and comfortable. So that would be my intent in doing that. Plan ahead for the interaction. What is my intent? So that I'm prepared and I don't feel, I can be more centered if I've planned ahead and know how the process is going to go. And then develop that back pocket question. We're going to get into some back pocket questions as we go through here. Find the need, be open and curious. What is my intent with that? I can't serve, and my intent, my personal intent with that would be, I can't serve them if I don't know what they need. So I have to be open and curious about what it is they're looking for and what their need is. Clear away the clutter. What is my intent with that? I just said to be present in the moment with these people so I'm not distracted, right? So just as you go through those different sales strategies, kind of figure out, well, what is your intent behind these things and the questions that you're going to need to find out. And again, social skills, we talked about the rapport and connection, and we're going to get into some questions on how to build rapport. That comes up in a little bit. The client's motivation, what is their North Star? This is, you know, what is your intent of being open and curious? What is their North Star? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they trying to retire? And, you know, Peggy has a client that wants to retire and move to Texas or Mexico. That's their motivation. Are they getting ready to have a baby and need a bigger house? And they want to get this done before they have that baby. Do they, you know, are they looking for a certain school district or neighborhood? So it's really important for us to, you know, figure that out with these building rapport questions. And then vulnerability and understanding of an emotion. Peggy, you just talked about, you know, your woman who lost her job and couldn't afford to buy the house after all. And she's feeling vulnerable and embarrassed by that. And we need to understand people especially feel vulnerable when they are moving to a new location and they don't know the area. They don't know if they can afford it. And you're giving, you know, you're having to hand over all your financial information to someone. You know, I know when we bought our own house, we're self-employed people. It's all the paperwork for self-employed, and you feel vulnerable doing that. You know, you feel like you're giving your life away. So having empathy with them and really understand kind of where they're coming from.
All the lender wants is your firstborn male child.
That's right. So here's the care portion of this as we go through. And again, to improve conflict resolution and unfavorable emotions, this is what we call care. Communicating, again, open communication with your client, even if it's bad news, don't kill the messenger. and communicating with all parties. Nothing drives us crazy more than an agent or client who doesn't call us back. So communicate, communicate, communicate. And the number one reason that real estate agents actually get sued is because they didn't communicate. Just even if it's bad, just say, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake or whatever. Communicate. That's all people want. Active listening, like we talked about, clear the clutter, get in the room, be focused, intentionally listen to what they're saying, and really pay attention with active listening. Your review options. Now let's look for solutions together. So you're going to explore all the options together to determine what is our optimal approach for moving forward, and then end with a win-win solution. As you all know, all of these momentum classes talk about win-win. You need to feel good about working with these people just as much as they feel good about working with you. It's got to be a win-win. So that's the CARE approach. So how do we do that? And what are some tools for doing that? Here's on page 25, 26, and all the way through page 30 are some great questions to help you go through that whole CARE process. And we're not going to go through all of those today because, again, we don't have time, but this is definitely something for you all to pull out on building that rapport. So when you bring the person into the room, we talked about compliment their emotions. If they're feeling a little anxious, hey, we understand that. This is a big process. Plan ahead. Here's some of those back pocket questions that you may want to use. So I want to thank you for investing your valuable time with me today. It's important you know that I'm only interested in making sure your needs and aspirations are met and that we can have a win-win collaboration relationship. Is that fair? My goal is to ensure that you work with me to make the most informed, intelligent decisions possible. Do you feel that that's my intention? Do you know, and again, that's why we're saying what the intentions are. And so if you actually go down on your form, the slides don't show all of that here, but on page 25, it really goes into, you know, how long have you lived in such an area? Do you have any pets? Tell me a little bit more about what you do for a living. What has your past real estate transaction experience been like? I really like that one because it gives you an idea of what perspective they're coming from. Was it great? Did they love their agent? Was it absolutely horrible? The person never communicated with me. I didn't feel like my needs were listened to. So I think that's a great question for building rapport. So again, you don't have to ask all of these. And as you know, Peggy said, and we all know that each transaction is different. So this is just kind of a list for you to go through and pick a few to gain rapport with. If it's your best friend and you know they don't have any pets, don't ask if they have pets. You know, this isn't just a dry script. So, but anyway, just some questions there on page 26. And then, you know, at the bottom of that page, it also talks about emotions and questions. So how did you feel? That's again, that journaling and the reflection back. How did that go? How did that appointment go? Did you ask the right questions? What are your emotions afterward? Do you feel great? You think it went well? Are you a little bit nervous about working with these people? And then questions that you might have that would come up later. And then on page 27, it's the same thing, kind of on the listing side, how you're going to build those relationships. You know, what's the primary reason that you want to list your home? You want to find out that motivation. And I'm just going to kind of pick some out of here. Describe to me the life you envision in your next home. Finding motivation, especially for a seller, well, actually for both parties, buyers or sellers, is really important because as you get into the transaction, it definitely can become emotional and people may want to give up because it's not always easy. You got a lot of stuff that you got to do. You got to do all the lending, the inspections, you know, getting stuff to the title company and lender, and they're packing their stuff up. And so sometimes they just want to quit, right? And so it's our job as that emotionally intelligent person in the middle to take them back to their motivation. Why is it that why is it that we're moving? Let's get back to why we want to get to where we want to go. You really want to get your kids in school before school starts, right? And that brand new, that new kitchen that you absolutely love in this house, and you're going to enjoy cooking those Thanksgiving meals and that kind of thing. Get them back on track of visualizing the future, because the transaction, it's a couple months, at the most. This too will pass. So it's our job to kind of really go through these questions and remember that motivation as we're going through the process, because when things go south, we got to get them back focused on what their real motivation is. So these are more questions again on page 27 and 28. And then 29 as well goes through your transition roles and expectations and some questions that you may have as you're going through the process. And then on page 30, I really like this page as well, because it's jumping the hurdles and overcoming some of the objections with that care process that we talked about. So again, know who and what pushes your buttons. Number C there, seek the whole picture and know what pushes your buttons. And then stop. If you're getting your buttons pushed, just stop and ask some of these questions. May I ask why you feel that way? If you got somebody angry, what's going on? Do you see value in what I do? Nothing pushes my buttons more than somebody who doesn't respect you and your experience. That drives you crazy. So do you see more value in me than you did your previous realtor? So if they had a bad experience, or if you're not meeting their expectations, you got to ask the question, because maybe we're doing something, we need to take responsibility for doing something differently. Maybe we're not communicating with them the way they want to be communicated with. After looking at the research we've covered together, would you share with me how you arrived at that price? That pushes our buttons too, right? I want $1 million for my home. Well, it's worth 500. Sorry. So anyway, again, these are resources and questions for you to kind of go through some of those objections and hurdles. So great resources in this packet for you to be prepared, that plan ahead for the interaction. If you know you're going on a listing appointment or you're going to be working with the buyer, pull out some of these questions, and so you can plan ahead and be prepared. Okay, on page 31 of your workbook, again, it just kind of goes through a little summary of that. Stay curious. Stay away from arrogance. That's really, really tough sometimes, because we feel like we know it all. We've been doing this forever, and we can become a little cocky ourselves. So it's really is important for us to stay away from being arrogant and stay in the question. Stay calm. Talked about that. Stay logical to try to neutralize their emotions, and then stay proactive. Know your walk away price. Again, if somebody's challenging your commission, if somebody wants to list their property for something that's ridiculous and you can't get it sold for that, you need to know when it's time to walk away. And it's okay. We don't have to work with everybody. Just like Kaz said, we have somebody who's not cool. We don't have to work with everybody. And then on 32, it's asking for the sale. Again, these are all just resources for you all to be prepared for when you do walk into that appointment. And so hopefully some of those questions and some of those things will be helpful for you. We're coming to the end here, guys. I know it's been a long class, but I really appreciate your input, and I think it's good information. So here we are again. Steps for continued implementation and improvement. As you know, it's always about action and taking action after we finish the class. If you sit in a class, but you never do anything with it, and you put this book on the shelf and you never use it again, then you didn't really learn anything, right? The point is to take action. So here's some things for you to continue to implement and improve. Implement the clear questions into your daily practice. So we talked about that. Hey, just even tape it up on your bulletin board or where you're going to make your calls. Am I calm? Am I level-headed? Is this emotionally charged? what's my approach to it, and how am I going to respond? And that's the implement number 2. Implement the R question into your daily practice. How am I going to respond to this situation? Identify and document your client's emotional state throughout each stage in the buying and selling process. Determine any unfavorable emotions and if they've arisen and what your response to it could be. And could a situation have been handled more efficiently? Did you get triggered? Did you just shoot off that email? Did you not call them back when you were supposed to call them back because you got overwhelmed? These are all self-improvement, self-analysis things that we go through. And then leverage care to assist in handling conflict resolution. And then when we put it all together, we need to continue to become more self-aware. It's a lifelong process to become more self-aware of ourselves, and then managing those triggers that happen, and managing the process, and then continue growing our skills, continue taking these classes, continue going through this workbook and working on these things. And again, we've got so many great resources out there, the Darren Hardys, the Brene Brown, the Brian Buffini's, that we can constantly continue to improve our skills. And then we want mindful self-assessment and self-reflection. Our core motivations, what motivates us? And that's really important because we need to know who we want to work with. Active listening, and be okay with delayed gratification. Sometimes we're working with someone and they're just going through a tough time. As we've said, we don't know what's happening in their life, or we do know what's happening, but we really can't walk in their shoes because we're not them. And so sometimes you're the one that has to take the brunt of their feelings and their emotions. But then at the end, you might be surprised that they really thank you for that. So be okay with delayed gratification, or yourself, even if you don't get the thank you, that you got them to where they want to be, and be okay with that. We don't always have to get the kudos on the back every day. And as we know, it doesn't happen that way. And again, this is just kind of a checklist for you all to continue working. And this is just a resource for you in the back for self-awareness, for self-regulation, readiness to respond. And again, that A question approach. So how are you going to approach this? And then leverage care, which again is you're communicating. You want to have active listening. You want to review all of your options and their options, and end with a win-win. So again, at the back of your workbook, just a little checklist for you all to get to use as you continue on. 37, you've got a great reference page there, and then all the resources that they talked about today. So that's it. Anybody want to share anything else, or as we move on? I know we've gone a little over an hour and a half. It's a little longer than we usually go, and I appreciate you guys hanging in there. I see a couple chat questions. Let me see. Oh, Chris and Crystal, they just both had stuff come up and they needed to pop off. So that was the only thing in the chat. Anybody else want to share?
Emotionally enlightened.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, I feel very emotionally enlightened.
Well, good.
That was really great. Thank you.
Yeah. Boy, you're welcome. Again,
my feelings are not hurt.
Oh.
That's a good thing, Kaz.
And neither are mine. So, well, again, this is an ongoing process. Our emotions are a huge part of who we are, and just learning who we are and how to control that, and how to help serve our clients better at the end of the day from knowing that information. So I really, really appreciate you all being here and contributing. It's great when we have great discussions and you all participate, because we all learn from each other. So let me know if there's anything else I can do, or if anybody has any other questions. I'm here.
Thanks a lot, Sandy. We really appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you, Cindy.
Have a good one. And happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yep. Happy
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, everybody. Just back your brother up. Tell your brother to back the truck up.
There you go.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.